Good evening, everyone. This is Flash coming at you with a special weather briefing video. We got a lot to talk about. Winter Storm Jaden heads the news lines, if you will, so we will get right to it. I'll start off with the National Weather Service in Nashville's snowfall accumulation map. This is the latest one they put out, 3 o'clock. This is bound to change, but this is what we got for right now. And you can see the lighter blues, Clarksville, Waverly, you guys are outside the winter weather advisories and watches for now. If you're in the 1 to 2 inch range, you're currently in a winter weather advisory, and I'll show you how this breaks down by county in a second. It does look like this storm is going to impact our southeasternmost counties and metros. So normally, we have seen the northwestern areas of the mid-state favored. This is the exact opposite, the way things are shaping up. We're going to break this all down. You could see Tullahoma near the bullseye there. Counties in the Huntsville viewing area market, it definitely look like they're in a good shape. This is, I'll say this on the front end, this is looking like mostly an East Tennessee special. However, Middle Tennessee is close enough to get in the game, and we'll see how much. That's the big question here. So this is how the advisories break down. Again, this is as of 3 o'clock. Purple counties, winter weather advisory, 1 to 3 inches of snow. When you hear a range, you gotta side on the lower end. I know it's easy to be like, ooh, up to 3, but no, it's chances are you'll probably get closer to 1. It's how it works around here. Could you get up to 3? Sure. I mean, you look at some of these counties, they're plateau counties. The range is probably going to be closer to 2 and 3 for them, up at Crossville, Smithville, Jamestown. But where you see the blue winter storm watches, those could downgrade to winter weather advisory closer to the event within 24 hours, which we're almost there. Actually, it's crazy. We're under 30 for sure. Those blue counties could also get upgraded to a winter storm warning. And the criteria is different per weather office. Huntsville has different criteria. Northern Georgia has different criteria. All they need is 2 inches of snow to have a winter storm watch go into a warning. So for here, if we were getting 2 inches of snow, that'd just be advisory. So just because we're an advisory, not a watch or a warning, don't play down the threat. Any snow in Tennessee, any snow in the South is cause for concern, especially how people drive around here. So we'll close that out. That's all we'll look at from the National Weather Service. We'll go to tropical tidbits, and this is a very interesting setup for a number of reasons. You can see our cold air source, that 1041 high it's straddling the North Dakota-Canadian border. That's our cold air source. And when you have cold continental air, you also have a dry component to that as well. Not a whole lot going on outside of the New England states. It's pretty quiet, but excuse me, that's 60 hours. Let me go to 6. That's going to be sorry. I thought I was at 6. I was at 60. Whoops. Yeah. So I basically previewed how cold it's going to get in 2.5 days from now. This is our current board, and there's a couple things going on. We have this coastal low. It's out at sea, but it's not too far. It's about 100 miles from Daytona Beach, Cape Canaveral. And that's going to be moving northeast in the days ahead. This is our Clipper hybrid system. It's currently over the Dakotas. It's going to pick up steam. It's going to head southeast. And we have basically 2 waves, and they're just going to miss each other. They're not going to come together. They're not going to sync up. We'd be talking about a different scenario if that's the case. But these 2, they're going to come close, but they still impact each other. So we got a coastal component here. We got, you don't really see anything yet, but there's going to be a Gulf fetch coming up from the south in the Gulf of Mexico. That's our second player. Then you have our primary one is this low pressure system diving southward. What also makes this interesting is this is a fight between long-term modeling and short-term modeling. GFS is mostly used in the mid and long-term, just like the Canadian, just like the European. And if you go by those models verbatim, you would think, well, we're going to be lucky if we see a flake around here. And you'd be correct. We see how this is the most recent version of the GFS 18Z. Again, these run 4 times a day like the European and the NAM. will go to 36 hours valid, 6 o'clock. That's 60, so that's midnight tomorrow. So about 27 hours from now. And you can see that frontogenesis, which, if you don't know what frontogenesis means, basically it's the tightening of a temperature gradient, change in temperature over equal pressure, and you get those tighter contours. And generally, when you have those tighter contours, that's where you find more lift. And that's really, when you talk about weather, if you're really simplifying it, you're trying to find areas where there's greatest surface convergence, which creates rising air, and then vertical or upper air divergence. And so you're looking for all those components. You're looking what's going on the surface, and also thousands of feet up in the atmosphere. And there's different values and parameters that pertain to surface convergence and upper level divergence. We won't dive in all this, but you can see the frontogenesis kind of, per the GFS, if we take it verbatim, it's not going to get its act together. That precip shield is not going to blossom until after it crosses 65, and it leaves most of Middle Tennessee, most of the metro populace, in the cold, literally. No snow. And so, and you can see it really blossoms over Birmingham. This is one run of one model, and so we're not even talking ensembles. So we're just simply looking at what one op of one model is saying. But we're close enough to where each run of anything we have to at least consider. The one thing I will say, just going off of this does look like, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, northern Georgia. This is going to be probably your snow event of the year. You might get a bonus one, but this is more of your thing. I said East Tennessee special. It's also going to threaten you guys. In southern Middle Tennessee, you actually have a better chance of getting snow, accumulating snow out of this than northern Middle Tennessee, which is very rare. But you guys are overdue. So you can see you got those high pressures. You got one in Texas. You got another one coming down. Those are also moving southeast. The one up in Canada, is coming southeast behind that low. And that low is a quick mover. Now, the GFS has a bias, and that is it's too progressive. I think it's going to go too fast. The GFS is projecting this front moving. This is moving too fast, essentially. That's its bias. It's going to move a little slower than that. All right, where do you want to go next? Canadian. This is 12 only runs twice a day. Now, the Canadian has a cold, and it starts to break out that snow further west in West Tennessee, where the Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee state line is kind of the dividing line here, instead of 65. So it's quite a spread mileage-wise. And you can see the same thing. Snow. This storm intensifies the further east it moves. And it's a little less fast, but it's still progressive. It's interesting to note, I didn't mention this, but that 994 low, it's in Ontario almost. It's barely hanging on in the States. And so this is a very strong, dynamic. It's not a pure clipper, but usually, I mentioned it in my last vid, I believe, with G or Hunter. If you want to see snow in the south, you need that low to be south of you, kind of a Gulf low, Miller A setup. In this case, the low is very much north of us, but because we're in peak climate, we're in the dead of winter. We got very strong cold air advection behind the front. The cold air is going to be able to catch up. This is actually going to start out as rain, but probably an hour or two rain at most. This rain is going to quickly change to snow with the cold air rushing in behind it. Normally, cold air doesn't make it. This time, the cold air is going to be quick enough. Don't get used to that, by the way. Let's look at the NAM. 12 kilometers is a little lower resolution, but it's worth looking at. And we're just going to go forward in time. You could see precip that starts to come together in like a squall line fashion, kind of like a QLCS convective system in the summertime, which, speaking of this winter storm, it has kind of some convective properties, as we'll get to in a minute. But you could see snow breaking out right over Middle Tennessee. right over the advisory areas. You see, for the most part, western areas and the LBL northwest quadrant, Middle Tennessee gets shut out. But plenty, well, just look at the cold air. You could see by the precip type, the frozen versus rain precip types. This is going to be, wherever it snows, it's going to fall to decent rain in places that normally don't see snow. Some moderate rates for sure. So you could, the NAM at this range is pretty decent. We go to high resolution, it's not going to show the snow breaking out as far west, which is kind of concerning. I am worried that the western areas of that advisory area, so any advisory counties west of 65, you guys are the most prone to potentially getting a bust from this. But there's still a lot that could happen. There's going to be some surprises, and I wouldn't be surprised if that section, while prone to bust, may also overachieve. The areas that have the greatest confidence are those east of 65, mainly Plateau and east of there. So the zero, as I cut this at 8:15, the zero Z NAM is in effect, or it's initializing, so we'll come back to it and see. But this is the 3 kilometer NAM. It's the highest resolution version of the NAM. And cold air is, it doesn't really catch up to the precip batch. I think I accidentally set this in I put that in motion. I don't want to do that. Let's go back. A little bit of snow trying to break out overhead over my location. You can see at hour 33, Nashville, you're going to be seeing snow. This is about 9 p.m. tomorrow night. If this is at 10 p.m. Again, Nashville, you're starting to see some frozen precipitation continue. Well, you're starting to see it continue, at least for another hour. But there's a tight gradient setting up behind it. This cold air rushing in is also there's, again, I said that dry component, and that's going to limit. The more progressive it is, the less precip moisture we have, the less snow we have. So how intense will that drier advection be, as well as the cold air advection? All right. So 11 o'clock, midnight. That snow shell in Tennessee is starting to look healthier, a little bit more robust. And by this point, Nashville, you're starting to go into the clear. Southern Middle Tennessee, though, you're getting it. Tullahoma, Cookeville, Smithville, heading into Crossville, you guys, you're getting some good rates at this point. And then kind of, it does okay through Chattanooga and Knoxville. But look how far south that snow goes. You're talking southern Mississippi and southern Alabama. That's pretty impressive. So we'll see how the zero C looks in just a minute. Just for kicks, I don't think the HRR goes out. It's within 24 hours. But we'll look at some short-term. The mesoscale models are your short-term models. And this is what you look at this time. Like once you get them, you could start putting more weight on the mesoscale models instead of the global and the ensembles. Especially since the global ensembles, their biases can continue up to the actual event. We'll look at the Europeans' bias in just a second. Okay. RGM, pretty much the same thing as the 3 kilometer NAM. A lot of these mesoscale models are cousins or brothers of the NAM, so you get something similar. The algorithms are only slightly different. Sorry, click on HRR. I don't want to do that. Some of the long-range extended HRR models are the most encouraging for Western and Middle Tennessee, and they kind of connect to the SREF Plumeveer, which, again, we'll look at in just a second. Lots to look at. It kind of helps, like, once I'm done with a tab, I close it out just because there's so much to look at. This is one of the examples of the WRF. Similar to the NAM, except it breaks out the precip further west. If you live in West/Middle Tennessee, you are rooting for this. Nashville, point south along 65. You're rooting for this model because the window for snow, instead of 1 to 2, maybe 3 hours, you're looking at something that's twice that duration. It's so odd that Huntsville is probably, Huntsville to Chat up to Knoxville line, basically just using primary cities here. You're in the safe zone with this. Middle Tennessee is really kind of on the line. It's just in a different way. It's so frustrating. This line is more frustrating than the usual Kentucky, Tennessee rain snow line. All right. Come back to this later. Pivotal weather. All right. So this is the 18Z NAM, and you can see how this fits the advisory area well. Let me go back there because I closed it out and I probably shouldn't have. All right. Because again, this is I might just sound like a talking head to you. These maps, these graphics probably are the ones that you're going to remember most. See these graphics? That 1 to 2 inch zone. This really corresponds well with the 18Z NAM, and this is the Kuchera, not the 10 to 1 rain to snow ratio, or snow to rain ratio, I should say. The Kuchera takes into consideration the cold air advection in the bottom half of the atmosphere, so 500 millibars to the surface, 1,000 millibars. And because of the cold air racing in, and it's like you have intense air in the back end, and there's going to be intense omega on the front end. The omega is basically your lift. There's going to be high negative vorticity behind it and high positive vorticity ahead of it, which is your spin. So high spin, high omega is going to lead to higher ratios, which means it doesn't take as much moisture to equal a bunch of snow. You know, the wet, heavy snows, I mean, you're looking at 7-8 to 1 ratios, but the fluffier stuff, you're looking at 15 to 1. And this could get up to 17, 18 to 1. So it's not going to take as much moisture to get to that inch or more mark. Essentially, this front is going to be so strong, it's going to squeeze out all the moisture in the atmosphere. It's going to just wring it out very quickly. And there's going to be a burst-like quality to this. It's going to very squally. It may seem like a mini blizzard is going on, just maybe without the intense winds. Williamson, Eastern Williamson, look at that divide. It's almost like if 24 were reversed and it was going southwest to northeast. That's kind of how these amounts are setting up. Very tight gradient to the west. I'm in East Dixon, and I do not like my spot at all. Depending on the timing, I'm probably going to chase down to Suwannee and do another GoPro adventure. We'll see how it breaks out, though. If this is going to be in the peak, early morning hours, I may punt. But you could see just how, if we're taking the NAM verbatim, some areas are going to see inches of snow. But again, err on the side of caution, because I haven't even shown you the European. Actually, is this the European animation here? This is total precip. This is coming off the 18Z Euro, and you could see that the Euro has been pitching dustings, which feels like a shutout in this situation for most of Middle Tennessee. And you could see how it's keeping the total precipitable water, again, the amount of atmospheric moisture that could be wrung out way south and east of here. That's not good. We're rooting against the Euro, but the Euro has a bias that it locks up the energy in the southwest corner of the United States, keeps it from ejecting out. And even as we get closer, it's no longer in the southwest. Even if it's to the south of us, there's still that bias where it's it doesn't allow the energy to go as far north, when in fact it actually is going to. There's a southern component. Again, that Gulf fetch is the southern component to this storm, and then the northern stream energy, and some of the models downplay the northern stream energy, and that's kind of key in all this. How is this northern stream energy going to weaken as it approaches us, and if so, how quickly? All these factors are important, and so much as a domino effect. So this is coming off WPC. This particular model, this lines up with the advisory levels very well. I think that if we get to that third shade of gray, so 1, 2, that's 1 inch. So that would mean about an inch, inch and a half at my place. 2 inches, Eastern Williamson, Rutherford, Murfreesboro, Smyrna. You actually might get more snow than western areas that are, more prone to that. Lebanon, you're looking good. Once you get to the plateau, you start to get in the 2-3 inch zone. There might be some dry slotting at times. There's going to be some swings and misses. I do like that graphic. It does account for some agiostrophic issues which again I won't get into that because it involves the Coriolis effect and pressure gradient issues. And anyway, this is another example. I think, what was this one? This is 20Z and 21Z. Okay, so these are initializing every hour. The 21Z came in a little drier. Yikes, that's not a good trend. And this is something that I'm worried about that we might be able to see is the eastward shift of the accumulations. This still would be good. Like the airport's looking at 2. I see a 2 stamped there. I see a 2 stamped in Rutherford. Really, you want to be south of 40 and east of 65 with this. That's bottom line. Should put that in the timestamp. Another look at the PWatt, precipitable water. This is a 3-kilometer NAM. This is the most generous for western areas of Middle Tennessee, but again, there's a tide creating with that precipitable water. That's concerning for Dixon, Cheatham, Stewart, Robertson, maybe Sumner, who knows. Depends on where you live there. And then this is GFS. This is not too bad. Actually, I'm encouraged by the GFS, but this was the 12Z run. 12Z Euro, a little further east. So you could see how we're on the dividing line there. All right. Cobb data, the 18Z NAM that I showed you earlier. This basically, the Cobb data basically takes your your soundings. I always mispronounce it. Raymond sound. The big balloons they launch into the atmosphere every so often, every hour. I forget how often. Every few hours, maybe. All right, let me make sure. This is interesting. This is the 18Z NAM. And you can see rain breaking out. This is 1Z. So what is that? 7? Look at this. 48.5 degrees at 7 o'clock tomorrow. We go down to 44.7 at 9, 36.6 at 10. Are you seeing that? That's an 8.1 degree temperature drop in an hour between 9 and 10 o'clock tomorrow. And by 10 o'clock, snow's going to start to mix in Nashville. 33.5 at 11 o'clock, rain, snow mixture. It goes to all snow at midnight, 26.7. Guys, look at that. That is an 18-degree drop between 9 o'clock and midnight. And look at those ratios, 18 to 1, 18 to 1, 16 to 1. That's going to lead to some pretty decent accumulations. That's 1 inch. That first hour, you get to 1.3, 0.5. Okay, that's by the hour. So that would mean 2.8, right? Make sure I'm reading this right. Total snow. There you go. So if we're taking this run verbatim, 2.9 inches of snow, and then we get a little bit. Do we get a little bit more towards the end of the run? We got an extra half an inch coming up on Wednesday. There's going to be some lighter, more pure clipper-like systems coming in behind this. Just for kicks, since we're here, and this is the airport, by the way. The soundings are for K, B, and A. I think we're going back to the 12Z because the 0Z GFS hasn't come out. 1.6 says the 12Z GFS. Similar, it brings the temperatures crashing further and faster, I think. Just kidding. No, it's not. Huh. So that's 34.6 at midnight. It bottoms out the temperature. The temperature drop is more steep after midnight. All right. This is a good place. This is, I believe, Iowa State, their Buff Kit warehouse. You get Cobb data for NAM and GFS. So that's a pretty good resource if you're like me. WPC, let's go to here real quick because this is a nice map that most of you could follow. I want to break this down by region, but you could see odds for 1 inch. So did this update recently? All right. Let's just refresh to make sure I'm looking at the most recent because I think I set this up like an hour ago. Go to GIF images. And yeah, you can see it's buying in that NAM more recent GFS, kind of taking a hybrid of those. For my location, we're looking at a coin flip odds of 1 inch of snow. Not great. You go to Nashville, 50-60. You go south, so maybe like Spring Up Thompson Station, you're sitting closer to 60, pushing 70. The further South and east, you go from there. And you could see just the security, the confidence is greater for East Tennessee, even northern Alabama, and extreme northwestern Georgia. What can I say? Knoxville, you're sitting pretty. Bristol, Johnson City, you guys are sitting pretty. Now that's for 1 inch. We go to 2 inches, and what's interesting is you would think there wouldn't be that, for my location, for instance, west of 65, there wouldn't be as great. And there isn't as great an opportunity, but you would think it would be like less than 10 or 20. And actually, we're close to 30. So decent odds for 2 inches of snow, so you can't write it off, because if this thing overachieves, WPC sees potential that there's evidence, there's a pathway for more, in other words. But you could see how that as far as coin flip odds go, 50% goes. It's pretty much straddling 65 almost. 4 inches. To get 4 inches, it's to have a shot, you need to be in northern Alabama. I think the higher elevations in northern Alabama. And the plateau, and again, Knox are sitting pretty. This is going to be a Knoxville storm for sure. So I don't want to jinx you, but I want to say congrats in advance. Plume viewer. All right, so I mentioned this briefly earlier. This takes a bunch of different models, mostly short-term guidance, NAM, and remember those cousins and brothers of the NAM. What's interesting, this is for, again, BNA. And that black line is the mean line, and it's looking like it wants to go a little over 3 inches. Pushing 3.5 inches, actually. By Wednesday. 2 shots of snow, it looks like. Now, I encourage you, viewing this at home, there's always this freakish outlier. You got 1 up to 7. Taking the Monday night into Tuesday morning storm, the highest possible outcome, the ceiling is 5. I would toss these out. You always want to toss the higher outliers out. They are skewing the mean. Wherever that black line sets up, that mean line, reduce it by 50 to 75% and tailor your expectations accordingly. But if we do that here, you're still looking at 1.5 to 2 inches, which lines up really well with what the National Weather Service is saying. Plume view is encouraging. In the short-term modeling, from what I'm reading right now, is a bit more encouraging. So you kind of have to shy away from whatever the GFS and Euro is suggesting right now. The Canadian now's not the time to get caught up in what it's saying. Go short-term. Plume viewer, we're done there. So I got out of tropical. I need to go back to tropical here, because I want to see if the 0Z NAM has any new information, and it initializes normally at 8:30. We don't want GFS. We want the NAM. Let's see what we got, folks. This is the first time I'm seeing this. Most of the time, oftentimes I will go through this a few times, at least once or twice before cutting these Loom vids. So we have precip breaking out at 7 o'clock. Hasn't yet made it to my location west of Nashville, Clarksville. You look wet. Snow breaking out in Kentucky, and we see some snow breaking out at 10 o'clock, northwest middle Tennessee. It's good for me. 11 o'clock. Now it's in Nashville. Starting to get its act together. You can see a streak of blue forming on the back end as the color catches up. It continues to blossom midnight to 1 o'clock. You can see that snow radius is getting wider. And there's some nice banding and returns over southeast middle Tennessee, so the 0Z NAM kind of holds serve. And if we go to snowfall, let me look at the 18Z here. So the 18Z, you had amounts a little bit further west. 0Z, it's pushing it further east. There's more of a cutoff. Now let's get to Nashville, and that's not good. Not good at all. Plateaus, southern middle, southeastern middle, you're still good in the clear. North Alabama. Oh, man, that's not good. I don't want to see that. And the 300 has more resolution. So this is a tough one because there is going to be a sharp gradient. And if it can snow, if we could just get it to snow overhead, those high ratios, it's going to stack up in a hurry. Even if we get 1 hour of moderate snow at high ratios, we could get a quick inch before this is all said and done. So that's why we just need to pay attention, and just anything could happen, I feel like, at this point. But certainly if we're taking this run of the NAM verbatim, the 0Z is not as favorable to, again, those areas and counties west of 65. So again, let me reiterate. For this event, you want the more south and east you are, south of 40, east of 65, the better you're sitting. And why Sewanee, University of South of Mount Eagle Mountain, is where I'm targeting. Now, I can't complain because areas in that direction have been shut out of recent weather events. A lot of areas that are going to see the most snow out of this haven't seen a flake all winter. All these areas got shut out in Jonas in 2016 and haven't seen meaningful snow in 4 years. And for me, I've had at least three 3-inch plus snow events since that time. So, and for the most part, Northwest Tennessee does better than Southeast Tennessee with snow. And because, Northwest Tennessee climate fits more with Western Kentucky snow climate. And anywho, I've had 1.5 inches of snow this winter. A lot of areas are going to get caught up. I hope to get something out of this, but let's see. Let's look at some other. Do we have any 0Z? Others. What about the RGM? Do we have the RGM? No. All right. Usually that NAM quickly updates first. All right, guys, that's it. Hope you guys. Let me look at Pivotal real quick. Kuchera ratio. All right, here we go. All right, see what I mean? 1.2. It's just blossoming. The frontogenesis is happening further east. The greatest omega, the greatest lift values are shifting further east. So, but all it takes is just a little bit. If we get a quick burst, Williamson, where you see that blue, that's the 1-inch line. Williamson and Davis, that's enough to get you a snow day for the most part, and you don't have to go far south and east to get that really good stuff. Eaglesville, I would still, 840 cutting over in Rutherford County, I would still, you're riding this thing. You're riding the fence right now. So, all right, guys, I've been talking too long. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a holler, shoot me a PM at your convenience. I'll try to get back to you. But stay safe, stay weather alert, and if there's anything big that changes, I'll try and have an update tomorrow morning. All right, peace.